Welcome to Whisper and Wonder, where soft stories meet soft voices. You're listening to Hello, How Long Has This Been Going On? Episode 8. Let's begin. Episode 8. For a moment, Huo Ryan was dazed. Then, he thought of the message he had just received, from Dr. Tao. Surely, Dr. Tao had eyes just like that. As Tao Jay met the gaze of a stranger, he froze in surprise. He couldn't deny it. The man had eyes like radiant stars and carried an air of effortless elegance. If he were a character in a novel, he'd undoubtedly be the beloved male lead that everyone fell for. A familiar name almost surfaced in Tao Jay's mind. Unbidden. Just then, it was his turn in line. Shaking himself free of that fleeting thought, he stepped forward to undergo the security check. This game expo didn't require pre-registration or ID verification, so the organizers compensated by implementing thorough safety measures at the entrance. Once officially inside, Tao Jay couldn't help but marvel at the scale and beauty of the exhibition. The organizers had truly gone all out. Staff members passed out brochures. Tao Jay took one, found a quiet corner, and pulled a notebook and pen from his backpack. Cross-referencing with his pre-made list of priorities, he circled each point of interest on the expo map. Some game companies had even arranged Q&A sessions with producers, lucky draws, and other events. Tao Jay, particularly drawn to the technical panels, picked a few that seemed especially advanced. He mapped out a visit schedule based on topics and locations. Fully in work mode now, he moved with purpose, observing which genres were trending, pondering breakthroughs in game design, and analyzing recurring mechanics. He jotted everything down meticulously, becoming an oddly charming figure amid the crowd. Most of the attendees were gamers, rushing to demo their favorite titles. Industry professionals typically headed straight for business halls or quietly observed in the public zones. None were as deeply immersed as Tao Jay, absorbing every detail like a sponge. By midday, his wrist ached from note-taking, but his spirit soared. Learning something new always made him happy. It was only after listening to the lead developer behind Happy Animal Island that Tao Jay finally understood how the game achieved such nuanced interactivity, by using a highly intelligent batch processing model. In Happy Animal Island, players could choose from over 200 animal avatars, each with unique designs and traits. Their behavior shifted based on context. A rabbit would walk differently from a tiger, and the way they picked up items varied accordingly. Even more impressively, the same animal would interact differently depending on the object. Picking up an apple looked different from carrying a log. Given the game's freedom and vast number of interactive items, relying on traditional animation methods would have been an impossible task. So the development team built a proprietary engine that could learn and replicate animal behaviors autonomously, classifying various models intelligently. The result? A vivid, imaginative world where you could live as a bird in the canopy, an ant underground, or anything in between, ready for serendipitous encounters at every turn. The developer concluded by saying they were continuing to refine the engine's logic and expand its applications. New blood was welcome, ambitious talents who could help build even more immersive experiences. Tao Jay's heart raced. If it weren't for the recent news that Huo Group was investing in the game's development company, he might have handed in his resignation right then and there. Reluctantly, he left the booth. By now, most booths were cycling staff out for lunch. Tao Jay headed for the rest area, pulled out a homemade bacon and pork floss sandwich, and a bottle of milk from his bag. Surrounded by onlookers waiting hungrily for food deliveries, he took a big bite. The richness of the filling, paired with the freshness of tomato slices, was deeply satisfying. After polishing off the sandwich and finishing his milk, he pulled out a box of neatly sliced fruit and began snacking leisurely with a toothpick while checking his phone. Had looks been able to ignite, his over-prepared backpack might have already gone up in flames from the sheer envy. Oblivious, Tao Jay opened the Little Green Bird IT hub and browsed the gaming forum. Maybe a fellow developer had posted about the expo. He was hoping to catch some fresh perspectives. No such luck, but there was a message from the ever-persistent programmer. Gua Gua, Gua, Tay, you're here. 1 hour and 17 minutes from now. It'll be 5 full days since you last logged in. I missed you so much TT. Tao Jay chuckled. Gua's timekeeping was always spot on. Thinking back, he remembered the last time he'd logged into the forum. It was the day after he'd added Big Bro HR as a friend. They'd stayed up chatting, and he'd opened the app the next day to keep himself awake at noon. So, it had only been 6 days since he met Hour. Strange, it felt like much longer. Looking back, the days before that, days spent entirely alone, felt distant. Like the remnants of a dream. Gua, ooh, you're online on mobile this time. Gua, wait, didn't you say you live in Jinbei City? Gua, oh, you must be at the Jinbei Game Expo. Is it a company project? Gua, are you doing a tech talk? I want to hear it so bad. Please record it. Tao, leave it to you. Sherlock. He felt a flicker of guilt reading Gua's hopeful question. Tao, nah, just here to look around. Our company isn't big enough for expos like this. Gua, then I'll just say it straight. Gua, I've got money. I've got shares, and I'm recruiting. Tao, appreciate the offer. Decline respectfully. Gua, no, backquote. Gua, oh. Tao Jay couldn't help but laugh. Gua had always been straightforward and cheerful. Since meeting Hour, Tao Jay had developed a real soft spot for such earnest, unfiltered people. Tao, you don't need to stalk me on the forum anymore. Let's add each other on PP. He sent over his PP ID. Tao, message me anytime if you want to chat about tech. Tao, I have a feeling we'll end up working together someday. Tilda. Gua, mom, look, a miracle. Gua, maybe I should confess to that girl I like today. She might actually say yes. Tao, good luck. Moments after switching to PP, Gua's friend request popped up. His username, not Gua. It's Guan. Accepting it, Tao Jay paused. That nickname, not Gua. It's Guan. Hi Tay. Not Gua. It's Guan. My name's Guan Leo. I accidentally left out a letter during forum sign-up, and ever since, everyone's been calling me Gua. QAQ. Not Gua. It's Guan. Clinging to the pro dev's thigh.jpg. Tao Jay laughed again, then typed a more formal reply. Tao. Nice to meet you. I'm Tao Jay. Looking forward to working together. Tao. Pro dev. Take me with you. .jpg. Not Gua. It's Guan. I don't deserve that. I'm just a small kitty. .jpg. Not Gua. It's Guan. Oh crap. My coworker says lunch is running out. I gotta go eat. Tao. Chow time. JPG. Under the default, my friends, group. Guan Leo's pink anime avatar now sat right next to HR's tranquil landscape photo. It was an odd pairing. But somehow, Tao Jay thought, it looked just right. He didn't plan on making a new group. My friends felt just right. 2. Feeling recharged, Tao Jay sent a message to Hour, who hadn't replied all morning. Tao. This morning was exhausting, but fulfilling. Tao. And I made a new friend. Tao. How's your business trip going? HR seemed to be looking at his phone. The reply came instantly. HR. Just finished lunch. The people here won't stop talking, non-stop chatter. HR. Couch potato mode. .jpg. HR. It's going alright. But today I saw someone who worked so diligently. I felt a bit guilty. HR. We're both here to learn. But he was way more immersed than I was. HR. I'll try to see more this afternoon. Gotta break out of my own bubble. Tao. That's okay. One step at a time. Wanting to change is already a great start. And he meant it. Tao Jay hoped that when he reached middle age, he'd still have the same curiosity and openness as Big Bro Hour. HR. I'll do my best. HR. Spinning teddy bear. GIF. HR. Dr. Tao. I'm heading off again. Let's catch up tonight. Penguin wave. Tao. Me too. Good luck out there. Tao. Penguin wave. Fed and rested, Tao Jay stood up, ready to continue the expo tour as planned. As he walked toward a booth for one of the more popular games, he passed 2 men chatting excitedly. Guess who Lao Jiao saw this morning? He went with the boss to the private business lounge, no public access. Who? Some rich guy? Yup, you've heard of Huo Group, right? They've been throwing money around the gaming industry like crazy. Lao Jiao saw the heir. No way. What did he look like? Any pictures? Nah, Didn't see the face. And nothing online either. But it's him for sure. CEOs were fighting to talk to him. Lao Zhao said it was wild. Damn, too bad he won't come to the public booths. Would have been fun to catch a glimpse. Their voices faded into the crowd. Tao Jay, standing still where they passed, couldn't move. Though Tao Jay had anticipated running into someone from Huo Group at the event, he hadn't expected that person to be Huo Ryan himself. After transmigrating into the book, Tao Jay only retained the written version of the plot. He had no idea what the characters actually looked like in real life, which made him naturally guarded. He didn't even know what the people he needed to avoid looked like. He'd tried searching for Huo Ryan online once, but found nothing. At that time, Huo Ryan hadn't yet stepped into the Huo Group's operations and was extremely well protected. Even his name had never been publicly revealed. The only image Tao Jay managed to dig up was one of Huo Jason, Ryan's father, in his late 40s, with a broad face and a naturally commanding aura. The man clearly used to be a looker. Combining that with the novel's description of Huo Ryan, cold and brooding, Tao Jay had formed a picture in his head. The textbook domineering CEO. Aloof and temperamental. Sure, Huo Ryan's personality only changed after he was injured while protecting Tao Jay, and then was coldly abandoned by him. But since 99% of the novel revolved around the emotionally tangled love story between the ruthless, disabled Huo Ryan and the main character Shen Neil, Tao Jay couldn't imagine any version of Huo Ryan that wasn't tragic and cruel. Would he see Huo Ryan today? Would Huo Ryan fall in love with him at first sight, just like in the novel? Tao Jay stood frozen, thoughts spinning. For a moment, it felt like the very air around him had gone still. He wasn't the same Tao Jay from the novel. He knew, without question, that he would never abandon someone he loved, especially not someone who was seriously hurt while protecting him. Nor would he ever shamelessly come crawling back for reconciliation just because his ex inherited a family empire. So even if he were to fall for Huo Ryan, he refused to believe things would end in the same way the original Tao Jay's story did, in loneliness and suicide. Over the past year, Tao Jay had tested the rules. He knew now the story didn't control his thoughts or his speech. He wasn't being puppeteered along the original plotline. He could go wherever he wanted, do whatever he wanted, and remain fully in control. But the story had a way of gently, almost reasonably, nudging everyone back onto the tracks it had laid. For example, Shui Hugo's manipulations had made his CEO believe Tao was about to resign. That led the CEO to reflect deeply and eventually decide to pivot into original game development. Encouraged by Big Bro Hour, Tao Jay had willingly agreed to attend the Jinbei Game Expo. And now Huo Group, lavishly investing across the game industry, had shown up here. Likely because of its young heir. It made perfect sense that Huo Ryan would personally attend. Nothing seemed out of place. Everything flowed naturally. And that was exactly what Tao Jay feared most. It was why he had tried so hard to avoid Huo Ryan. Because if they fell in love, then the car accident would happen. It had to. Only then would Huo Ryan be transformed into the cold and broken man destined to meet Shen Neil and begin their redemptive romance. Tao Jay didn't want to live under the shadow of an inevitable accident. More than that, he didn't want a healthy, whole Huo Ryan to become disabled because of him. Even now, filled with dread and resistance at the mere idea of meeting this man, Tao Jay still didn't wish for him to be hurt. What happened after that, how a healthy and gentle Huo Ryan might cross paths with the main character, was no longer Tao Jay's concern. If, of course, he could truly escape the grip of the original storyline. Tao Jay snapped back to the present, only to realize his back was drenched in cold sweat. That hollow, suffocating sense of dread had crept in again. People were passing by and giving him strange looks, but he felt rooted to the spot. He drew a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm. Eyes shut tight, he clung to the memories of the past few months. His breathing, trapped inside the mask, grew damp and stifled. Oxygen seemed to drain from the air. He remembered the smell of beef stew simmering late into the night, the sound of colleagues laughing around a shared meal, the heady scent of gardenias in full bloom at the park, the little girl chasing butterflies in the center of the path. He saw the fuzzy brown bear on his screen gently patting a spiky hedgehog on the back with its wide paw. He remembered that evening at the bus stop when the heavy fog over the city finally cleared. The sunset had been molten and low. The warmth of its light had brushed against his cheeks as he waited. And he had glimpsed a long, slanted shadow stretching across the pavement. It was his shadow. "You're breathing. You're real. You can see the screen and read my messages. That's what real feels like." His trembling lashes finally stilled. Tao Jay slowly opened his eyes. In a single moment, all the color rushed back into the world. The crowd moved, buzzing with life. Strangers passed him with animated faces and wind in their wake. He could feel it all. He was no longer trapped in nothingness. And so, Tao Jay took a step forward and kept walking. Blank. Underscore, blank. At a luxury hotel beside the convention center. In a private dining suite adorned with glittering gold decor. Dishes were plated like artwork, tiny servings in elegant white porcelain. The Game Expo organizers were hosting the dinner. A man in his 40s, flushed with excitement, talked endlessly, pausing now and then to wipe sweat from his forehead. "This is our third year running the expo in Jinbei, and feedback has only gotten better each time. It's now the most influential event across the surrounding provinces. If given the chance, we'd love to expand nationwide. Yanping would be ideal. Even in the capital, we'd be competitive. Yanping City, China's capital and the dream of every company." Huo Jason had built his empire there from scratch. Huo Ryan had grown up in Yanping. But now, sitting at the head of the table, Huo Ryan said nothing. He just listened. Beside him, Zhang Nassan tried to read his expression but gave up, opting to simply take mental notes of the organizer's rambling pitch. These scenes, these speeches, Huo Ryan had heard them all before. His ears had learned to tune them out. His new phone sat nearby. Accustomed to the clarity of button-based phones, Huo Ryan had dimmed the screen. The chat interface with Dr. Dao was still open. "Dao. I think so too. That message had arrived that morning. Huo Ryan had spent half the day thinking about it before he realized what Dr. Dao actually meant. He'd heard plenty of polite, smiling pleasantries over the years. People always said it was an honor to meet him. How lucky they felt. How privileged they were. But this felt different. Dr. Dao didn't know who he was, his job, his background, even his age. Since they met, Huo Ryan had made a mess of things. Constantly confused by his own strange emotional struggles. Clueless about modern slang. Even his sister didn't need to tease him. He already felt embarrassed enough. But Dr. Dao had said he was glad they met. All he'd done was offer a few simple words of encouragement. Plain and ordinary. Yet somehow, those words had given Dr. Dao strength. Across distance and anonymity, his words had changed someone's life. Had helped someone find the courage to face hardship. It was a strange, wonderful feeling. He'd tried all morning to find the perfect word to describe it, but oddly enough, he kept thinking of the way Huo Sophie described her idol crushes in over-the-top metaphors. It was like 100 little bears doing somersaults inside his heart. Then celebrating with honey and fireworks that bloomed across a sky too dazzling to look at directly. So yes, Huo Ryan had been in a great mood all morning. Even surrounded by strangers chattering endlessly. Even with nothing useful to take away from it all, he still felt it was a good day. Just then, Dr. Dao messaged again, saying the morning had been exhausting but fulfilling. For some reason, Huo Ryan immediately thought of that fleeting figure from earlier. A young man in a mask, bright eyes peeking out, dressed in a white tee and jeans. He'd caught only a glimpse of him at the entrance earlier that morning. Before being ushered into the meeting hall, near lunchtime, when his meetings had finally ended, he'd passed through the public area and spotted the boy again. He was holding a thick notebook, earnestly jotting down notes, occasionally glancing up at the enthusiastic presenter on stage. His eyes shone. Huo Ryan wasn't the only one watching. People all around were subtly drawn to that spot. The boy stood there quietly. And yet he was impossible to ignore. Huo Ryan stared for a long moment before remembering where he was supposed to be going. He'd been drifting through the entire lunch, lost in thought, but suddenly, he had a picture in his head for what Dr. Dao might look like. If only Dr. Dao would agree to meet him, maybe he could show him around. Take him to try some local food. Last night, on the way to the hotel, Huo Ryan had looked out the window and seen Jinbei at night, food stalls glowing. crowds chattering, fragrant steam curling into the cool breeze. Back in his school days, during his travels, he often ate at places like that. The people around him had always been lively, real, unfiltered, laughing and chatting without reservation. He had to admit, after 2 months of corporate routines, all this sameness was beginning to wear him down. The organizer's pitch was winding down. The man lowered his voice, eyes shining with hope. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Hello. How long has this been going on? If this story made you smile, feel, or pause, consider subscribing to Whisper and Wonder. New episodes every week. Until next time, stay soft and keep wondering.